This is Pat Marsh, your host for the PM Talk Show. We would like to thank our fine underwriters for supporting our show.
North Shore Center for Wellness is a behavioral health care practice that offers a myriad of services to children and their families in the Tangipahoa Parish community and surrounding areas. Our mission is to promote the well-being of the individual and families by providing accessible, quality health care. North Shore features quarterly Let's Talk wellness training, community outreach, and education. You can find more on these and other trainings on Facebook. For your convenience, North Shore accepts Magellan Healthcare and is located at 904 West Coleman. North Shore Center for Wellness. It's our goal to enhance the quality of life for our clients. Parish's Supportive Living offers assistance in your home with everyday living tasks. We offer to the community long-term care, personal care, a community choice waiver, and many other services through the state Medicaid waiver program. Plus, we offer competitive direct service worker salary. You can contact Parishes at 985-662-5347. Medicaid, private pay, and insurance are accepted. EEOC. Parish's Supportive Living is also licensed and insured. Find them on the web at parishessupportiveliving.com.
Hello, this is Pat Marsh, your host for the PM Talk Show, and we're out here on beautiful Miller Lake, again discussing educational facets in school systems across the state. We have with us today Mrs. Osa Betts-Williams, who's very, very familiar with the educational spectrum. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How
Good, I'm doing great. I know that you have a long history in this parish's educational system, and I also know that you graduated from college, Southern University, in 1972. Okay, well, one of the things I'd like to do first, because a lot of people want to know, well, what did she do? Just tell my audience what it is you've done, how you're continuing in this educational field, and then we're going to get a little bit from you on your feelings on Common Core and on Park.
Okay. Well, when I began my public career, I should say, it was after I graduated from Southern University in 1972. There were so many things going on in my head because as a student at Southern, I worked with organizations who did public forums with various public officials, and it was a good background for me. And as a part of that, I felt really empowered to do some things for my community once I returned home. So I began working with an older group of adults with the NAACP, and from that I worked with youth who are now grandmothers and fathers, and we began a young group called Black Leaders of Tomorrow. Now, in that group, you know, there was male, female, and I had no restraints on anyone who could attend, but by virtue of the name, it was started by young African American students who were residents right here in Hammond. As a result, probably 90% of these young people went to college. Many of them are in various professions throughout the United States. We have some who are in professions right here in Hammond. So I feel really great about that humble beginning. I have tried to keep my feet on the ground all the time throughout my adulthood. I've always worked with families, with children, with communities. I've been involved in my professional career from beginning to end with families, working with the welfare department, child protective services, juvenile probation and parole, and even as an elected official with the Hammond City Council, I worked with families. As you know, if you're going to be a professional in the community and you're community activated and you're community oriented, it's hard to step aside and allow things to happen to families and not really try to get in and work with them. So that's been kind of my mantra from the time I graduated from college. Since then, I've gone back to school and obtained a master's degree in public administration and a master's degree in education administration and supervision. I received a certification in child welfare and attendance, and in my earlier years, I was kind of planning to go into political science, and I became a Taft Fellow during that process. And that's really a very important part of the political structure because it's named after one of our former public officials. After going through all of that, I was constantly still working within the school system, within the parish, helping families to obtain the things that are much needed. Sometimes just, helping them to get housing or medical assistance or whatever is available out there as a resource for families I've been involved in.
I see here that, and we'll get back to the part that you're talking about now, but you're also the president, or you served as president of the Louisiana Safe and Drug-Free Schools and Community Association.
Yes.
And it was during Hurricane Katrina.
Yes.
And I'm sure that was very, very challenging for you.
Pat, it was more than challenging. We have, the organization still exists. It was people from all over the state of Louisiana who worked with the substance abuse, violence abuse, alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs, addiction and abuse throughout the state of Louisiana. And in this, we decided to form an association, and our first president was Mr. Bobby Pierce from Washington Parish. And Mr. Pierce was so adamant that we formed this association, so there were about 9 of us, and I was the first secretary, who got together and we contacted people throughout the state who were also in that profession, and we came upon the idea to form an association. It was a fees paid association. We did phenomenal things throughout the state because we had the support from each other. We were a support system within ourselves. And during the time that I served as president was the summer of 2005, and it was supposed to be through the summer of 2006. However, right after I was elected, Hurricane Katrina decided to visit. And at that time, people were just scattered everywhere. And we as an organization really worked hard to find our people who were still in Louisiana, bring them back together and keep our association going. Because at that time, we were still drug infested, and that hasn't really changed. If you notice in the media, it's coming back. We worked, and our primary focus was alcohol, tobacco, other drugs, and violence prevention. So as an organization, we continue to work, and we continue to spread the message and work with families to help them to understand what their young people were going through. Because, we had drug testing even then, that parents could do voluntary drug testing, and they could work with their children if there was a substance abuse problem. We offered many of our cohorts were counselors by profession. So we had all kinds of resources available. But because of federal cuts, the program was cut more and more and more. I think the only really strong program that's still in the state is the I-Care program, which is in Baton Rouge. And they were wise enough to have a tax base to fund their program. So as I understand it, that program is still really strong. In 2006 through 2007 was a building process. And once we had the program rebuilt, I did a 2-year term, and I think thereafter it was recommended that everybody do a 2-year term. I probably had the hardest 2-year term, and I think the leadership skills that I've developed over the years and the ability to use people as a resource for other people has been a positive, and I think that's one of the reasons that our association continued to be successful, not just because of me, but because of people like Ms. Gaspard, who was the secretary, and Ms. Joan Crane, and so many people, Bill Noonan, and it's endless, the names, Brenda Francis, from different parts of the state. So we were a strong group and continued to persevere over the years.
You're also an active Diamond Life member. What's the name of that little organization?
Delta Sigma Theta Sorority
Incorporated.
Incorporated.
I
Yes.
always love to hear you guys say it, and I love to hear Ebony say it also.
Yes.
When you look at continue to look at the educational spectrum, and you know about all of the Common Core and PARCC testing that's done, what are your feelings on the pros and cons of both those programs?
Well, it's an unfortunate situation that we find ourselves in with those programs. I can't really just say I'm against testing, I'm against Common Core. I don't feel good about it. I can certainly say that. And I think that there need to be a revisiting of that total package, because PARCC was recently introduced, whereas students were still using formal forms of testing when Common Core was introduced. And our children in this parish, including those who've already graduated and gone on to college, and some of them who have completed their college careers and gone on to professions, have had a struggle, because our parish, for some reason, and I'm supposing that it's probably true of other parishes, have gone through so many textbook adoption processes, have gone through so many changes in curriculum. Once we really get our children involved in learning one way, then somebody comes up with a whole different way of learning, and it can be quite confusing. So with Common Core and PARCC, I think they both need to be revisited, possibly revised. We need to look at what's best for Louisiana. I know we constantly go outside, and it's good to be global to some degree, but we're constantly going outside of our state looking for things to fix our state, when, you know, it's always been said that local people solve local problems best. So that's one of my concerns about Common Core and PARCC. And of course, I'm around young educators all the time, and many of these young adults are just so frustrated and overwhelmed that they're ready to get out of education. And believe it or not, these are some of our best educators. And it really grieves me to know that this profession could be falling apart as we watch it fall apart. And we're not doing what we need to do to fix it.
Have you had an opportunity to talk to either Senator Ben Nevers or State Representative John Bell Edwards about these things and how it's ill affecting our schools?
As you know, or probably Ebony has told you since she's one of my SARs, we have a red and white day at the state capitol every year. And in the process, we're able to go into the chambers and you know, sit in on hearings and various things. And I've spoken with Mr. Edwards as well as Mr. Pugh about feelings about Common Core, about our educational system. But one of my bigger concerns, and I had the opportunity to meet Governor Jindal some time back. I can't say I'm very happy about some of the things that are going on there either, because I know that Governor Jindal has been out of the state of Louisiana a lot over the past 3 years, and he's primarily responsible for our education as well as our health care. And those are two issues that are really crumbling before our eyes. Baton Rouge General recently closed down their emergency room, and it's in the heart of the city of Baton Rouge and serve a large number of people. That should not have happened. We've been offered federal funds from the Affordable Health Care Act, and it appears that our state is one of the states who chose not to accept those funds. So we're finding ourselves in the midst of SUNO and UNO at the brink of being merged, and both sides are really disgruntled about it. This is something that's been going on since I was in undergraduate school. I believe that each of those universities, as well as all universities in the state of Louisiana, have their own identities. They have their own school pride, and I think that that's something that we should not tamper with. So with that point being made, I think that our governor should look more carefully at his portion of the budget that takes care of higher education, our schools, public school system, as well as our health care initiatives, to find out what can be done to bring these things back up to standards and fund them a little bit better.
Right. Well, we got to break for a minute, but we're going to come right back and talk about the effects that this is having, that you see as a community advocate for Southeastern University.
Okay.
Going for break, and we'll be right back.
Next case.
The People versus Martin White. Mr. White has been charged with...
Guilty. Next case.
But Your Honor, you haven't heard the charges yet.
Guilty. Next case. Guilty. 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 Life in prison. Guilty. Next case.
Welcome again to the PM Talk Show. This is Pat Marsh, your host. We have with us Mrs. Osa Betts-Williams, who is a community advocate and liaison for a lot of people needing assistance in the Tangipahoa and surrounding areas. Before break, we were talking about different educational perspectives with Common Core, with PRAC, and how the state of the economy in Louisiana is affecting our major universities, which brings me to this question. How do you feel this is going to help Southeastern? Everything that's going on now as far as the funding, the cutting of the funding, and even though I'm hearing they've decided not to cut some, but I know it's already hurt them in some ways. But do you have any ideas on what maybe our legislators should do or could do to make things better for home right now?
Look, Southeastern, I am not a Southeastern graduate, but I have taken classes at Southeastern. I've been involved in so many things at Southeastern until it's like a second home for me outside of Southern. And it saddens me to think that with all of the new construction that's going on at Southeastern and with the expansion and the, even though they have some fluctuation in student population, it saddens me to think that Southeastern is going through what it's going through. This is our flagship university for Hammond, you know, so I have a lot of Southeastern pride. You know, I wear my green and gold as well as my blue and gold. So I just believe that, you know, I look at the students that I know at Southeastern and how distressed they are about the increase in fees and all of those things that will be cut as far as curriculum is concerned, the programs that will be cut, and it's going to be devastating. And I believe that there is so much more that our legislators, our governor, and even our community should be able to do to help our universities not continue to sustain the cuts. At some point, the bleeding has to stop or the body will die.
Right. So when you look at that, in your talking to our representation from this area, what do you feel their take is, or is there anything they can do now to try to undo some of the things that have been done?
Well, when I spoke with them, it was basically about public education. I would hope that they feel the same way as most of us about our college cuts, any higher education cuts. I haven't spoken with them directly about those particulars, but I would like to have their feelings on those issues because, you know, when you're in a position like that, you're in a position of negotiation. And there are many things that we can do to help home when we are in elected positions that other people can't do. And again, it starts with local people solving local problems. And the people who represent us out there in these various positions, whether they be local, parish, state, or federal, they are in a position to help us.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you this. I'm listening to you and I'm thinking about your sorority, where you go over to the Capitol and everybody is dressed in red. What if everybody that could come together for that day and voice their opposition to a lot that's going on, whether it be Common Core, Park, or whatever, do you think that would get the attention of our governor to help him to see this is killing us?
I've been to the Capitol on many occasions other than Red and White Day. I've gone with our Tangi Dems organization, and we've gone to present our feelings about our educational system and the things that are going on with it. I think that many groups should get together and come together as one at the Capitol and voice opinions. Just get a date, pick a date, let's meet at the Capitol. The prime time is coming up. Right. The sessions are beginning to start very soon. So I think that if just organizations from all over the state of Louisiana, and especially here, so that we can protect our universities. Yeah. And again, Southeastern, Southern, LSU, and of course my grandson goes to Louisiana Tech, so I have to bring them in. I think all of those universities need to be able to thrive. Right. They need to have the right to stay open. They need to have the right to continue to have the programs that the students who go there have come to expect. And I went to Southern because there were certain things that I expected when I went to Southern, just as those who come to Southeastern have certain things that they expect at that university. So I believe that without those programs, we're going to lose students. We're possibly not going to graduate as many students as we have in the past. And if we don't graduate those students, what are we going to do to be competitive, not only on a local market, but on a global market when it comes to finding jobs? We need more industry for economic development in Tangipahoa Parish especially. But I look at some of the more rural areas, Pat, and I'm thinking, there are so many young people who come from these rural areas who have to go out of state. If they had companies who would come into those areas and plant roots, those children wouldn't have to leave home. Exactly. I've lived in Hammond all my life. I can remember when Morrison Boulevard was a rock road and then a paved road. So, for those who live in the more rural areas, if they had something right at home where they would be able to stay in their environment and be able to work and thrive in that environment, I think it would make everybody happy. Now, I'm not saying that some people don't have a yearning to move out of state and do other things, but we have so many people here in our area who really want to stay home.
Mm-hmm. Something that brings me to something I was thinking about as you're talking. Common Core and Park is supposed to teach kids how to think critically. Now, we have 75% of our kids we already know that will not graduate college. Right. 75%, which is more than, it's a large percentage. So, what do you do with Common Core knowing that these kids already are not going to college, or with Park? How do you prepare them when you say they're thinking they're going to learn how to think critically, but if there are no jobs, if they can't score high enough on the ACT test, or if they can't come up with the money, or their GPA is so low that they can't get into a college or a university, how do you address that using what they're using now?
Is there any addressing it? Realistically, is there any addressing it? The one thing that I think has been really a bright spot in the college arena is when our president decided that it would be a good thing to allow students to go to community colleges for the first 2 years at no cost, or I guess little cost, if any. That's a little bit of motivation to go on and get that 2-year degree and then possibly be more motivated to go ahead to college. Well, if they're not graduating, they can't get to our community colleges because they're not going to have the particular standard that's required. And I know even with BRCC and even North Shore right here in Hammond, You know, there are requirements to get into those programs. And if we're not educating them, if Park and Common Core are not doing what needs to be done to get our children educated and forwarded to being able to move on to college, then we're in trouble.
Well, because when you look at it, if what Common Core and Park is not doing because the kids are not getting it, then you're right. We have an even bigger problem.
That's right.
And it's not going to be good. Any way you look at it, any way you cut it, it's not going to be good. When you look at the teachers who try hard to teach what they know, I still contend, and I don't have a problem with accountability. Accountability is good.
Definitely.
But teachers have to be able to teach. They have to be, with a lot of the restraints that's on them now from Common Core and Park. They have to be able to teach, and the kids have to be able to learn. Well, we're getting ready to close. Do you have any closing comments?
Oh, I really thank you for allowing me to come on. I hope that something that we've said will prick the hearts of some of these people who are able to do something about it. That's my biggest prayer right now, is that, you know, someone will just get up and do something about what's going on with our children.
Will you encourage the public to get out and call your leaders over in Baton Rouge and just let them know?
Not only in Baton Rouge, but on all levels.
Right.
You know, because our U.S. Congress members should be able to come in and do the things that's needed to help us out in Louisiana.
Well, we want to thank you for coming. We will be bringing you back soon, as well as others back soon. But we appreciate your views of Common Core and Park, because people need to know. This is Pat Morris, your host, thanking you for continuing to join the PM Talk Show. Remember that knowledge is powerful. It does matter. Thank you. God bless.